All right, everybody, let's have ourselves a little manga chat. It's been a little while since we've done one of these. I was busy with holiday stuff, and then some. I got sick for a while, and I was on a work trip, and busy, of course, with these seemingly endless year end retrospective videos. But in all that time, I never stopped reading manga. In fact, I probably read more manga than average throughout those periods. And I never stopped wanting to share my takes and feelings about it, which is, kind of the core of what this whole channel is about. So, as I've said before, Manga Chat isn't really qualified by anything. It's just series that I've been reading recently for any number of reasons that I feel like talking about. We have 5 to talk about today. Let's plunge right in with Tetsu, the Defiant Wind. This is an old single volume Fukumoto series that recently, kind of out of the blue, got picked up for scanlations by a new group. I think this is their first project. I'm sorry, I should have made a note of their name, but I didn't. I don't know. It really warms my heart to see the back catalog of Fukumoto start getting scanlated and filled out in English like this. He's famous, of course, for like Kaiji and Akagi, and then to kind of the next tier down for maybe like Kurosawa or something like that. But if you plumb the depth, there's a lot of these short series, especially in like the 80s, that really kind of built his reputation and established him as like a career mangaka, someone that was going to keep getting these opportunities until he really finally hit on that combination mahjong, gambling, the psychological aspects that made him into kind of an international success. These early works are quite interesting because they have like elements of that. They certainly have the same kind of intense passion for gambling related subcultures. Here, as you would guess, it's horse racing, but he hadn't really worked out kind of the perspective yet. Instead of looking at a gambler involved in horse racing, as in a later series, Ginto Kin, or, Kaiji spends a lot of money at the horse tracks too. Instead, here we're looking at the jockeys, the management of the horses, the stables. It gets very into the nitty-gritty of horse ownership and how the allocation of money and support is done to facilitate these horse races and all this stuff. So it has the same kind of like analytical mind. He certainly understood his audience was like interested in these sorts of cultures and wanted to see like kind of a complete picture of them rather than just what is apparent from engaging in the gamble itself. The plotline here, you might be able to infer just from the title. We got a renegade horse. Truly the Defiant Wind. Baron East is a horse that no man can tame. It doesn't start when it ought to. It runs haphazardly. It doesn't run in a straight line. It won't listen to commands. It doesn't seem to be giving its full strength. But an observer realizes that Baron East, through a certain stretch of the track, actually outperformed every other horse and seems to have this limitless capability to just run fast that hasn't really been tapped into. And so he undertakes this quest to save the horse. It was going to be put down because it's so useless. It gains notoriety. It rampages through a town at one point. And at the part of the story we're at now, he starts to race again with Baron East, trying to prove that this sort of defiant wind has the potential to exceed all of the more well-behaved thoroughbred horses. That's pretty cool. Pretty, not super surprising plot line, but really neat to see kind of Fukumoto's twist on it. Just this very kind of psychological, analytical appreciation for both our main character Jockey and the horse being these sort of defiant figures. We see this sort of imagery a lot in Fukumoto, like somebody who understands all of the rules of society and can kind of like abuse them and operate taking advantage of them, but isn't constrained by them, is willing to defy them and at some point will sacrifice the benefits of society in order to kind of transcend the limitations of society. It's a very kind of early example of that sort of plot line in Fukumoto. Another thing that really I thought was very cool is that it seems to contain a lot of Fukumoto's own perspective on horses and the idea of horse racing. The jockey main character goes on all of these long rants about how unnatural it is for horses to be forced to run in a straight line, to be issued commands by the jockey, to be told to start and stop on command, that in the wild, horses did none of this stuff. And that to harness the power of Baron East, he needs to tap into its wildness, to let it run like it was wild while still running the race. And I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. I don't know if that would ever work in practice, but it seems to carry like a certain ideal of Fukumoto. And of course, there's like a metaphorical kind of relationship here between humans and horses and society and all that. It's all very good. And all of this packed into one volume. The plot is quite brisk, which may seem a little out of character for Fukumoto. But back then, he really worked in these kind of like small formats. Before this as well, there's a lot of like one-shots and stuff he did. Then he kind of graduated to these single tankobon stories. And then at some point, the major long-running stories like Ten and Gintokin started taking off. Yeah, this is really cool. I'm just like really, really happy it exists. I'm really happy that this group decided to pick it up. I think that's very inspirational. And I hope they continue plumbing the depths of Fukumoto's back catalog. There's quite a lot. He's been a very prolific and hardworking mangaka for decades and decades now. And, as a Fukumoto Giga fan, I'm excited that maybe someday I will get to enjoy his entire oeuvre. All right, let's move on to another Fukumoto series. So when Tetsu started getting scanlated, I was really enjoying it. And it made me realize, hey, as a self-proclaimed Fukumoto Giga fan, as someone who says that Fukumoto is their favorite mangaka, there are still gaps in my Fukumoto reading experience. And this was one of them. This is a series that had been scanlated quite a while ago. I would guess just based on kind of the miscellaneous artifacts, like the credit pages and stuff, advertising their IRC channel. This was probably scanlated in like the mid-2000s. It's kind of fun. You can do some sort of like scanlation archaeology when you read old scanlations. Stuff like font choice or the memes they put in the credits page, or if they're advertising a Discord server or an IRC server or a forum or whatever. Anyways, I was like, all right, maybe it's time to read some of these other old series that I just haven't gotten to yet, that have been waiting for me. This one I had read the synopsis of before, or like the very brief summary on Manga Dex. It sounded like brutal, and I thought it would maybe be like the most combat focused of Fukumoto series. And at the start, it kind of suggests that direction, that it's about the titular Outcast Gai. And one of the first things we learn about him is that he has like a supernaturally fast punch, and his combat reflexes are just off the chart. They're cheat code level. In one scene, it shows that he practiced by punching at his own reflection until he was able to like hit his reflection before the reflection was able to throw a punch, which makes no goddamn sense at all, but it's pretty freaking badass and it looked cool. I really do think that this is one of maybe several examples where we can point to and say, this was Fukumoto trying to make something that may have had like mainstream appeal. Like he kind of took a look at the genre of like the delinquent, a delinquent brawling series where you watch a compelling delinquent guy beat up people, rise to power, etc., etc. It kind of seems like maybe he was going for something like that. The setup is very much in line with that. And even, once it kind of gets into the meat of the story, he gets transported to this like secret, inhumane prison. You get the sense that, this is going to become, he brawls his way out of the prison. He has to fight guards and his fellow prisoners and blah, blah, blah. No, 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 no. It gets like very derailed by much more kind of typical Fukumoto stuff. And I think it's quite interesting to see him kind of like maybe at the behest of an editor or something start with a premise that has so much mainstream appeal, that has like a very like mainstream appealing character of the incredibly strong outcast delinquent, and then totally veer into like mind games and human psychology and long kind of moral philosophy and debates about the human condition and blah 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 blah. Because yeah, it becomes this whole kind of story about this insane sadistic dictator man who's running this prison, claims that he is trying to rehabilitate these people into functional adults, and to that end he tortures them incessantly. And it becomes like this kind of battle of the psychologies where he is basically saying like in order to live a good life you need to conform and stop being so wild and stop being so outcast, whereas Guy, his whole persona is built around this idea of individuality and sort of a zhoosh level of self-reliance, not taking anything from society, not relying on society at all. And then these ideals clash over kind of a long, prolonged war between him and the guards. All the while, he is also trying to prove his innocence in the case where he was framed, which sent him to this prison in the first place. That escalates in a really exciting way, too. There's a great kind of feeling of detective work and intrigue. The detective character that he works with is really, really good, too. And I love that they make Guy, he's not a monolith, you know? Like, they make him such a strong character, such this sort of, like, transcendental character that has this, again, God-given, unnatural fighting prowess. But he changes throughout the series. He has realizations. He has an arc. And I think they managed to balance that really, really well, that he doesn't feel, like, incomplete at the start. He already is, like, a very compelling character that you feel is so well-defined and robust, and you're just kind of excited to see more of him. But then he grows in such a natural way in these like really beautiful cathartic moments, and you start to kind of appreciate him on another level. Like he goes from being just this kind of ideal that you're excited to see get tested and surpass things to a living, breathing human being that you have a lot of empathy for, that you start to really root for. Really, really nice stuff. My only complaint is that it's like way too short. And this is an odd complaint to make about Fukumoto stuff. The plot seems rushed. I don't know if this was sort of an editorial issue, that it was losing its place in the magazine or whatever. But you would never say that most of the major Fukumoto series are rushed. On the contrary, I think they're mostly associated with very long, some might say belabored depictions of things. We're going to focus on this gamble for like 300 chapters. That's just one arc. Going all in on this stuff, not kind of skipping a beat, not leaving anything to the reader's imagination. This is very, very different. All of these plot points start colliding in a really compelling, exciting way. But they've just built up so much in the premise that things start getting resolved like snap, snap, snap like that. There's certain kind of like standoffs and scenes that, were they to take place in Kaiji, I could imagine being stretched out to like 5 or 6 chapters of just examining each character's perspective, their assumptions of other people's perspectives, working through this like n-layered sandwich of different people's reads of the situation and how it will play out. And here, it all gets resolved in like 2 panels. Just boom, boom, on to the next thing we're going through. It's not the worst thing in the world. Like, that kind of snappy pace is quite exciting, too. It was really exhilarating to read the series because it really never lets up. But at the same time, I wish they had relished a little more in moments of catharsis and moments of victory and moments of suspense, which is stuff that I really think Fukumoto is so fantastic for in other series. So yeah, good stuff. I think at some point I'd like to make a video that's just all about Fukumoto. Maybe a tier list of all the series or something, or just like kind of a chronological retrospective of his works, and how I kind of see his career developing and his style developing. Let me know if you'd like to see that. I don't know. I just love Fukumoto so much. I feel like he is starting to become appreciated more in the West, especially when the Kaiji anime was airing. That was like a real kind of international heyday for him. But I feel like even among fans of Kaiji, let's say, he's really underappreciated. People don't know about his depth. People don't know about his range. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. Let's have many more Fukumoto chats in the future. Next, I want to talk about Ousama Ranking. It's back, baby. So this was a series I really, really enjoyed. I watched the anime initially and I loved it, and then I sought out the manga, which I think I loved even more. It's so strange. It's so like outsidery. It's so idiosyncratic. The art is like amateurish and in all these really charming, delightful ways, and it hides this strangeness, this mystery, the lore of the series, the character designs, just these long-standing questions that they open and leave open for so long. It's really, really amazing. Like, it feels like somebody that really both understands the appeal of these sort of modern shonen series that build up their worlds and build up their lore in such an engaging, mysterious way, but he's still coming from it with such an outsider perspective where he's not making the obvious choices about what will appeal to people. His signaling of things is all strange. The powerful characters don't necessarily come across as powerful. And so it kind of like stimulates two sides of the brain simultaneously, both the side of me that loves battle shonen and loves power scaling and loves seeing the world build up to contain bigger and bigger monsters, but then also the side of my brain that just loves weird things and strange esoteric things and stuff that you don't really get a good read on, that kind of creeps you out, that has like a weird emotional tone to it. And yet at the heart of everything, it's actually quite a lovely, friendly, charming series where the characters are really likable and it has a strong sense of morality and it's all just about good-hearted adventure. It's a really, really weird combo. One of the most unique manga I've ever read. And it went on hiatus for like 2 years. Basically, when the scanlation caught up to the current chapters, they were like, oh, guess what? There are no more current chapters. And I believe the reason why, and I don't mean to misrepresent the situation. Maybe it's better if I say little about it and not give people the wrong idea. But basically, it was like the creator of it was involved in a lawsuit where I believe the creator was the plaintiff, and it all had to do with like libel or something. And that's all I'm comfortable saying because I don't remember much more than that. I'm not even sure like why it was that while this lawsuit was ongoing, the manga couldn't continue, because I don't think it was like directly to do with the manga even. But at any rate, maybe just due to busyness or emotional fatigue, these things are very stressful, being involved in a lawsuit on either side. The manga just stopped, and it's back. As of like 1 week ago, it's back. Chapters have been coming out at quite a pace. Very big kudos to the Scanlation team for keeping up with that. And man, what can we even say about this current arc? I think in some sense it's a very typical Ousama Ranking arc, or at least in kind of the latter half of the series. It's kind of progressed like this, where Bochi and Kagi stroll into a town and something weird is happening, something's going on, and they slowly kind of investigate it and involve themselves in a very often naive and without full comprehension of the situation, sort of just stumbling around within this very complicated conflict, and then ultimately playing some major positive role in the climax, maybe relying on Boji's insane hidden power level, or Kage's ability to kind of surreptitiously gather all sorts of information without maybe even understanding exactly what it is he's hearing. It's kind of playing out just like that as well. But I think it's quite interesting. Like, as I said before, the series does a really good job of world building, of kind of like hinting at the lore beyond the lore, the most powerful echelon that kind of dips its toes into the main plot. Those being the titular ranking of the king's system, one, very mysterious entity. We know the one guy that administers rankings is actually insanely powerful. We don't really know what his deal is. This guy on the cover, who's an absolute beast, may also have been a ranking person in the past or related to them somehow. Also, there's the gods in Ousama Ranking. I love how they depict the gods as just these insanely powerful creatures that walk among everyone else. They seem to be corporeal and mortal, but not human either, and immensely powerful and possibly immortal, but not invincible. And they just kind of seem to be like wandering around. Their desires are completely mysterious to us. Their engagement in human activity is inconsistent and strange. I really, really like it. It seems to kind of tap into more ancient cultures' understandings of gods. Before, this is, wow, this is a huge tangent, but basically, the further you go back in history, the more tangible gods usually are in more and more ancient cultures' mythology. That if you go very, very far back, gods are like basically just people and they're just like chilling. And then slowly they ascend to, oh, okay, well, they all have like corporeal forms and they look like stuff, but they live in Olympus and we can't see them. They're way up there on the mountain. They exist, they're real, they're hanging out, but they're way up there. And then eventually that gets replaced by more typically monotheistic religions, where God has like no form. There is nothing to depict. You could say maybe, oh, God can take the form of XYZ, but really he is this omniscient, omnipotent, everywhere and nowhere kind of existence. Anyways, as I said, a long tangent. Very, very interesting to read about the way that almost all world cultures kind of fit that pattern as the religions sort of change and replace each other. But the gods in this series definitely harken all the way back to the most like primordial first kind of depictions and mythologizing of gods, which I find really, really interesting. And it kind of stirs something in me, just this feeling of them wandering around and taking all different sorts of roles in human society. And I don't know, I'm just rambling at this point. I just think the series is so cool, and I really hope I can get across how neat I think all of the lore and the mythology of the series is. And then on top of that, it's got like cool action, fun arc writing, fun plot twists. The arc right now, as I said, it's somewhat by the book, but it's by the book in like kind of tragic ways as well. It may be a very frustrating, unpleasant arc to get through, but I'm sure there's going to be moments of justice and catharsis by the end that I'm excited for. Good stuff. Very glad that it's back. All right, let's talk about Komi-san Can't Communicate. This is a series I read for a very, very long time. I picked it up maybe when it was like 60-ish chapters in. What was the last thing I can remember happening on my catch-up? I think it was like the White Day where he gets candy. And it was like one of the first moments where you're like, whoa, relationship progress. And of course, since then, the relationship has progressed a lot more. I would say, oh, spoilers, but you can see right on the cover. And then at some point I dropped it, mostly because the Scanlation group that I was reading also dropped it, which in turn was because Viz started doing simulpubs, and then I was kind of just too lazy to read the official scans for a while, but I decided to partake in the other best deal in manga. Already the best deal in manga is getting the Viz digital Shonen Jump subscription, which is like $3 a month, and you get to read all of the Shonen Jump series that they've ever scanlated ever, plus all the Jump Plus stuff, and I think even another magazine. Already just a ludicrously good deal. And then you can also, for an additional $3 a month, get the Viz manga collection, which has a whole bunch of other things, just random licenses they've picked up from all different publishers, including Komi-san. So I was like, all right, well, I guess it's time to get caught up on Komi-san. Basically, even though, you know, I could have read it through various means in the interim, in like the 2 years since I had read it, I was not enthusiastic to it because I was really kind of getting sick of this series. I kind of like this idea, you know, she's trying to make 100 friends. She's in a school that's full of like wacky shenanigan characters. You kind of learn about each of them in turn. She has a little arc befriending them, blah, 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 blah. That's all fine and dandy. But it was like the barrage of weirdness started just super saturating the manga, where there was just so many characters that all had such extreme personalities. And then they would introduce like new characters, because you got to get all the way to 100. And the new characters would have to have even more extreme personalities to stand out. And you've already kind of run through all of the like semi-sensible archetypes at this point. So now you have to come up with like such bizarre character types. And it's like kind of interesting, you know, just on the sense of like, well, that is a challenge. What did they come up with? But it just made the storytelling like so manic, so detached from like humanity. There didn't really seem to be like the same sort of heart in it. You know, with a rom-com, it all just comes down to you have to find the characters endearing. You have to like cheer for them. You have to genuinely care about their feelings. And I really did kind of have that for Tadano and Komi. For quite a while there, I felt really caught up in their romance. I was really excited. But it's like all these other freaks, they don't do much for me. And just that feeling of mania, the feeling of like just really extreme personality jokes flying in from like all directions at all times, it made the whole thing like so exhausting to read. It just felt like so far detached from like the very intimate human stories. And then getting caught up, it's kind of more of the same. I would say it was like 75% stuff like that. Or just stories that seemed so silly to me that they were pointless. You know, stuff that focuses entirely on comedy that I didn't necessarily find so funny. I think aspects of the series are funny. I think at the start it was quite funny, but like, it all just feels very played out at this point. But they're like 36 volumes in, man. It's just kind of how it is. But I was happy I got caught up on it, and I'm happy that I have the opportunity to start reading it as it comes out again. Because there are moments that are good. The other 25%, where they kind of hushed the noise and the chaos and focused in on just a few characters, a few of the more reasonable characters, and had like genuine stories about them, about their feelings, about their arcs. It was lovely again. And I was like, yeah, actually this person knows what they're doing. There's even some chapters I found really funny, even though they were kind of goofy and absurd. The one where Komi goes in to get interviewed for her college application, and it goes like totally off the rails, and she like isn't even like listening properly because she's so nervous and is just like saying strange things and stuff. Pretty good, pretty good. I think we're heading for the end. They're gonna graduate soon. I imagine this is one of the series that ends at graduation. And I'm sure that will coincide with her getting her 100th friend. And yeah, that's fine. That's dandy. You'll make it probably like 40 volumes. That's quite a run. That's quite amazing for a rom-com. Produced 2 seasons of, I think, a really fantastic anime adaptation. I was really, really impressed with that. So much fun, so much personality, such variety in how they depicted things. I can't complain. I really can't complain. Even though I complained a whole bunch just now. I think this is a very solid series. And good job. Kudos to the author. Just next time, maybe just make like a normal rom-com. It doesn't need to be so crazy, man. You don't have to have 100 crazy characters running around like it's Pokemon, all trying to outdo each other on the crazy scale. I don't know. All right, let's talk about Oshinoko. Actually, first let's check Slack messages. Soon. This is my boyfriend. He's coming over later. We're gonna have dinner. I'm so excited. Let's go. Yeah, so I read Oshinoko. If you've watched my anime review videos, you know that I have very mixed feelings about this series. Basically, aspects of it really, really impress me. I think it's some of the best production Dogakobo has ever done, adhering to the rule that the more perverse and offensive the series is, the better the Dogakobo production therefore becomes, which is a rule of thumb I've subscribed to for many years. Um, and like aspects of the storytelling really impressed me too, but then other aspects I found very, very stupid. And then beyond that, there is aspects that I found incredibly offensive and I found quite like degrading to the people that it depicts, dishonoring memories of real people by creating the like stories that sort of mirror real life events, but then changing them in ways that I found, yeah, like very insulting to their memory. Generally speaking, it all kind of revolves around this idea that the show is, or the series, I guess I should say, we're going to talk about the manga now. The series is like, all right, well, let's take a look behind the smoke and mirrors, behind the glitz and glamour, and see what it's really like to work in the entertainment industry. Is it truly a fair meritocracy? No, no. It's definitely, as you would expect, a ruthless industry of personal favors and manipulation and abuse, and sacrificing your integrity to do things, degrading yourself to do things. Um, None of it is as pleasant as it seems. Sure. That's not really surprising, but I would say it's interesting. I think it does actually do a good job at this aspect of the storytelling. Like it gets quite in depth of everyone involved in a project's kind of personal motivations and how that creates this like very intense spider web of conflict and opportunity, subterfuge, manipulation, blah 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 blah. It does a really good job kind of just like building up that whole causal chain, that whole foundation of this whole industry is like based on lies. That's all well and good, but then they really try to have their cake and eat it too, through two ways. One is that at the end of the day, there's a huge emphasis on, okay, but the product they produce, whether that be like an idol concert, a variety show, a dating show, manga, a movie, a play, every time it's the same lesson. Gosh, it was sure excruciating. We really saw how the sausage was made, but what a delicious sausage. The audience is so happy. What a transcendental moment it was for them. What a joy it was to be able to perform and create this thing. In the end, it really was worth it. We are doing something that is such an irreplaceable good unto the world that even though it was this horrifying meat grinder, torturous process to get through, it was indeed worth it. And it's like, I don't know if you should be saying that, mangaka baby. I think that's like a little infantilizing and presumptuous. And it's like, how do I put this? So I've talked about this before. I'm just kind of restating an argument I've made before. But if you listen to like interviews with these sorts of creative artists, that's basically what they say. They don't get into as deep into the this lying and subterfuge and everything, but they emphasize that it's like a lot of work, and they might even emphasize that they just got lucky and that it's very arbitrary, and they feel very grateful that they got lucky. They say, yeah, it's all these negative things, but When I get out on stage and I see my fans, it's worth it. When I read the reviews and I see the smiling faces in the audience, it's worth it. When I win the respect of my peers and the critics and get genuine acclaim, it's worth it. That's what they say because that's what they have to say. That's what they're being told to say. That's what their career relies on them saying. How do they really feel? I don't know. Do they feel like they got tricked? Are they actually there for much more mercenary reasons? You know, are they actually thinking all of this is not worth a fucking thing, but I'm getting paid a lot, so it's fine? Are they thinking this all sucks ass, but it's better than an office job, so whatever? There could be any number of like mercenary reasons that don't read well in PR that are actually way more accurate than, oh, I'm doing it for the love of the fans. Okay? Or it could just not be worth it at all, and they could feel stuck or manipulated, or that they can't get out of it, or that they made a horrible decision. And none of the characters in the series say shit like that. There's characters that like, oh, they can't hack it. They leave the entertainment industry, whatever. But again and again, it's like they're repeating this line of like, but in the end, it was worth it. And the big cathartic moments are the performance, where it succeeds and they're able to achieve what they wanted to do in that project, in that arc. Those are the climaxes of the arc, or the big performances. So through the storytelling, even if the characters didn't say stuff like that, you're being told, well, it was all building up to this, and this is what made it worth it to go through that excruciating process. And I think that's just kind of bullshit. I don't think it's like we're being empathetic. We're showing you how it really is. And we're just regurgitating the line you have to say for PR. In a sense, it becomes like the ultimate sort of PR, because it's being like, we're peeling back the surface to show you the truth, but it's just another lie. How appropriate is that? That's the whole freaking series. Is there's lies behind lies, and what is the truth? And The other thing that bugs me too is that it does so much to break down this idea of the entertainment world being like a pure meritocracy, where it's like, oh yeah, it's not really about being the best actress. You have to have connections. There's all these like secret favors being done behind the backs of the auditions. This is presented as like unfair and unjust and not good for the projects. And a lot of the like major evils of this series, a lot of the most tragic moments kind of happen because of this sort of general theme of manipulation, where it's not really the truth coming out, but rather something distorted to make money, to appeal to audiences' base desires, not to kind of do things fairly and above board. You know, like the dating show arc and the variety show cosplay interview, and the whole backstory of Akane and Arima. It's all kind of the same theme of like, they weren't doing it properly. They messed with things in order to make a quick buck, and that has devastating consequences. So it's like that on one hand is a theme, right? And that's sort of an empathetic theme, because that's probably very true. And that's something that all artists have to struggle through. But on the other hand, they continually still demonstrate a logic of like, you can overcome these irrational forces by just being even better. So like in the dating show arc, they misrepresent what happened with Akane. This leads to hideous internet trolling. She attempts suicide. It's all very shocking, all very devastating. It definitely desecrates the memory of Hana Kimura, the real person that was bullied to suicide after appearing on a reality show in a very similar incident, not coincidentally similar. But Akane attempts suicide, but is saved by Aqua. And then they do this kind of like rehabilitation campaign where they show a video of like the real Akane and the real behind the scenes and how everybody really did get along. and this largely quells the wave of internet hate, and she's able to kind of restart her career. And it's like, what? I have so many problems with this arc. I'll ramble on for an hour, if I have to. Let's or another example. I think maybe the most similar example, although this pattern plays out again and again and again, is like the whole variety show thing. They do this like really inappropriate interview with a cosplayer. The cosplayer is offended. She roasts the show online. It feels like a real catch-22. There's no way to get out of the criticism of the show without kind of like silencing this voice, which also comes across very poorly. They can't figure out how is there any way to get a PR win out of this. This feels doomed. And then Ruby comes up with this genius idea of, we'll have the director make an apology on the show while cosplaying. It's going to be this like crazy over-the-top stunt. And it works, and everything is redeemed, and the show gets back in the good graces of the fandom and everything. And it's like, you can't present this idea that the negative response people have is like disproportionate and chaotic and just this like surging ocean of anger and flaming and negativity, and then at the same time be like, but they'll change their minds if we present them with something good. They were illogical in their hate, but they'll be logical in their forgiveness. You know? Like, because it's not realistic at all. And again, it feels like very, very insulting to people that have actually like gone through this. Like, imagine you are an actual idol that fell into a huge scandal because of something that was leaked to paparazzi. And, you know, it's this horrible system where as soon as there's a scoop on an idol having a love life or something, her fandom is... The hell was that noise? Her fandom is decimated and everyone is pissed off and they burn effigies of her and all sorts of other outrageous things. And the series is basically suggesting, well, if you had been cleverer, if you had come up with a really smart scheme and done XYZ things, they would have left you alone. And it's like, no, they fucking wouldn't. How dare you even suggest that? How dare you have these like very real world plot lines, these scandals that are definitely based on real events that happened, and then been like, hey, well, if there was a magical twink who was a reincarnation of a brilliant doctor, and he schemed a way to get you out of this, you probably would have been fine. It's just, like, so nonsensical. Okay, so those are my big beefs with the series. Basically, both cake eat problems, where they want to be gritty and realistic, and then they have totally unrealistic, totally insulting conclusions and moments of catharsis and happy endings that make no sense. But I think I knew all along it's not that bad. It's not the most ludicrous thing I've ever read. It's not really that crazy compared to the plot lines of like many, many other manga. And I think it was mostly because I was watching it in the anime. And the anime, I think, is more insulting and more transgressive because the anime actually needs to have like real actors and real idols involved. Like, I know this for a fact because my friend worked on Doga Kobo. They have like reference videos for the dances where they have real idols do the dances that Bikomachi is going to do. And then the animators painstakingly, it's not like rotoscoping, but they use it as inspiration for the dance sequences, right? So it's like, not only are you making this very dubious statement about the worth itness of being an idol, and yeah, it's all worth it when you have that moment on stage, that transcendental moment. They had like real idols that are like anonymized that were like really doing the dances as like fodder just for the creation of the show. This is bizarre to me, man. So I knew that was going to be like a component of my problem. And then in general, I just have so much more tolerance for manga. I let manga get away with so much more than I do anime, let alone something like a live action movie. Things can make less sense. Things can be more morally dubious. Things can have more inconsistencies in messaging. And I'm more okay with it because consuming manga, it's more like passive. It's more lenient. I just am enjoying myself like more to begin with, probably. So I was like, I'm sure when I read the Oshi no Ko manga, I'll probably like it. Anyways, this is all the preamble. I did read it. I was on the plane to my work trip, and I had it downloaded on my phone, and I felt like, this is the time. This feels like the right time. So I read through the whole thing, most of it on the plane ride there and back, and then the last 20 chapters or so this morning. I have mixed feelings. Now it's sort of like, I am still kind of upset around all this messaging stuff. Obviously, I just ranted about it for like half an hour. But I definitely am more forgiving of that. And now it's just sort of like, does this thing have like a good plot? And my feelings for that are like very jagged and just keep kind of flip-flopping depending on the scale that we're looking at of the plot. So like, I think the premise of I was reincarnated as the kid of my favorite idol is like really stupid. And I think most of the things that resulted from that, most, not all, but most of the things that like hinge on that being the concept are like also really stupid and like low points of the series. But I do think I am going to avenge my mother's death. I knew that her murderer is someone in the entertainment industry, and therefore I am going to plunge into the darkness of the entertainment industry to try to seek this person out. That's a pretty good plot. And I felt like all the stuff that's kind of primarily motivated through that, this whole kind of journey through the connections of the entertainment industry and all the kind of twists and turns that entailed, that was pretty good. Similarly, I think this concept of having arcs where each arc kind of takes a look at another pillar of the entertainment industry, and we kind of set the stage, we introduce some characters around it, we learn the behind the scenes logistics and drama and challenges, and then we work through all of those and put on a great presentation. That's good again. That's exciting again. That's another winner. But then on the more micro level of that, looking at each individual arc, as I said before, the ultimate conclusions and the happy endings and the moments of triumph are often like very stupid and very insulting. So it's like a really jagged feeling I have around this. I think where it succeeds most is like, this is an author that understands how to write a good twist and how to really kind of transcend your expectations in, I think, some pretty compelling ways. Like, often I was really caught up in the cliffhangers of the series and the surprises, the way that plot points are like woven back in, things that felt like they were just sort of table setting, or kind of like a side story from an arc will suddenly rise to prominence. I really like that sort of stuff, and I think all of that is quite well done, just kind of looking at it in the abstract. And I mean, I read the whole thing in like 3 sessions. I was obviously very engaged. I really did want to see what would happen next. But then on another level, it's like, so many things that happen in the series are like so stupid. And it feels like the author like knows some of them are stupid too. Especially near the end, there's so many things that like happen and then kind of get undone. And it's like, oh, you got some bad feedback, didn't you? It just feels like they keep kind of like being like, hey, well, you thought it was like this. All right, maybe we should just kind of put aside spoilers on I'll talk specifically about it. Okay, so this is spoilers. I really do think it's worth reading. It's a very unique series. It's very crazy. I did overall have a good time with it. That's my final recommendation. But okay, from here on, spoilers. Okay, so what was the deal with them being like, okay, Kamiki is the bad guy. He's the one that orchestrated everything. He's like the psychotic serial killer. Ah, well, now that you found the truth, it's like he was actually molested and he like fathered a child when he was 12 or whatever. And it's all very scarring and traumatizing. So that's kind of why he did what he did. Like, he just sort of lost touch with reality, and it's like this cycle of abuse. And really, I wanted to forgive him, and now maybe the kids will want to forgive him too. And then it was kind of like, ooh, what? That doesn't really make any sense because he killed like 5 people. He was like responsible for the deaths of like 5 people. We saw him like gleefully watch somebody die. Like, I don't think you can walk back on that. And I feel like that was like the author being like, oh, shoot, right, right. We showed him like laughing at that dying woman. Shoot. So then it was like, oh, well, he was getting manipulated by this other woman. She was the real evil woman. And she like broke his brain or something. This theme of like people's brains getting broken becomes more and more apparent. It's like, oh, okay. But then they were like, she wasn't really a good villain after all. That didn't really go anywhere. So, oh, it was Kamiki after all. He was even more evil. He like tricked everybody again. And I guess you can say, oh, well, that's the theme of like, it's a lie within a lie. You know, even when somebody tries to take the mask off, there's another mask underneath. Blah, 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 blah. Who was really tricking who, whatever. Who was truly honest with one another, nobody, whatever. This like, it's just, and maybe it would have been better a week by week if I was reading it week by week, but like reading it all at once, I was just like, what the fuck? And just the ending, I just found like so, like, I guess it would have been weird if Aqua keeps living, because he's still just like a 40-year-old man in the body of like a 20-year-old. And now he's gonna like date another 20-year-old or whatever. It's just like, okay. I still don't like that. All of the like romance and relationship stuff is very weird to me. It just never felt right. Never felt right. And I know they were like, well, Aqua and Goro, they're not really the same person. Your personalities are drifting apart. And now your previous reincarnation, your previous life as this doctor is becoming just like a weird dreamlike memory to you or whatever. And I was like, I still don't like it, because the whole idea was that for the first big chunk of the series, this was like a prodigy kid because he was actually like a 40-year-old doctor in a child's body. And that's why he was capable of doing all this stuff, because he was like super genius prodigy kid. And then they were just like, well, we kind of like shipped him too hard with Arima and Akane. Now the fans really want like an end to the shipping thing. They want something definitive. So we're gonna like, we're just gonna like backpedal on that a little bit. Don't worry about that. Didn't work on me, man. Didn't work on me. I didn't want to see him end up with either of them, and I guess so. This was like a good ending in that regard. Oh, and then the whole thing where it's like they finally realize who each other was pre-reincarnation, and it's supposed to be kind of like a cathartic moment of, wow, their dreams have kind of like come true. You know, I'm finally reunited with Sensei. He is my biggest fan. Oh, I finally got to see that like dying kid perform on stage. But then it was like immediately like, and you remember he said you'd hear me out when I turned 18. And guess what? I'm 18 now. And I'm like, ooh, I don't like this. Now it's like doubly bad, because already it was like this weird thing where you were supposed to think, oh, that's just like a kid being cute. And then you don't ever want the kid to actually grow up and then marry like the adult that she was pining after, because then it just becomes like creepy. Like, why would he go along with that? So it was like that doubled with like incest feelings. It's just stupid. Hey, whatever happened with the plotline of her like pre-reincarnation mother? Like, I thought there would be some sort of like moment of catharsis there. It was all just ultimately like fodder for her performance, that she like comes to grip with the fact that her mother never loved her. But like, I don't know, it just sort of felt like they kind of brought back some stuff for the sake of bringing it back, without really kind of having like an emotional place for it to go. It just sort of happens for the sake of happening. It feels kind of like writing yourself into a corner. I think in many cases the series sort of suffers from that, writing itself into a corner. A lot of like things that I thought would be kind of major climaxes, like Aqua finally confronting Kamiki, or the first like revelation of who Kamiki was, felt really kind of anticlimactic and very sudden. And I think it was very much a like, oh shoot, I guess this has to happen now. I guess we didn't give ourselves an out for this to not happen. So now it has to happen, but we don't really have like a climax prepared for it. We don't really have like a reason for you to be excited about it at this time. It's just like happening now. Okay, here he is. This is the guy. I don't know, man. I don't know. It's weird. It's a really weird series. It's really hard for me to put into words how I feel about it. Like, overall positive. I had a very good time reading it. There was aspects that I thought were very, very well done. And then so many things I thought were done just so bafflingly poorly. Like, just so nonsensical and weird, man. Okay. I could go on and on and on. I think that's probably it for manga chat. I will say I am really excited for what's their name? Akan Akasake Akasaki Akasaka Aka Akasaka, I think. This person, because they wrote this and they wrote Kagura-sama, and I liked both of those quite well. I think I like Kagura-sama better than this. Kagura-sama wasn't anywhere near as messy as this. But two very intriguing, very fun, very crazy series. I'm really, really excited to see what they do next. Okay, that's all. Please look forward to the next manga chat. Bye bye.